I think one of the best ways to start is just by saying that I'm going to ask a lot of questions today to get us to participate and make our session interactive rather than a lecture of me just talking. But the topic is going to be on multi-religiosity and what I call the social justice algorithm, which we'll discuss in a bit. And the idea is for us to gain an understanding collectively about how to better use the tools available when we think about social media and digital marketing, such as like websites and Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is that you might use to better. It may have a bad connotation when I say sell your message, but essentially what we're doing is we're packaging a product, which is our social justice ministry, and we're going to put it out into the world using digital marketing techniques, using what I call a social justice algorithm. Where this comes from is, well, as I mentioned, my PhD is in Islamic and digital media studies, and part of that was looking at social media and understanding how Muslims in specific, how they use different types of media to counter stereotypes about Islam and about Muslims. We'll talk more about that in a bit. And after the completion of my dissertation and getting my PhD, I worked in the video games and tech industries for a long time, doing digital marketing and just learning a lot of different things about social media. Right as social media was climbing, and YouTube became a thing, and I've learned a lot of interesting things in the belly of the beast, so to speak. Hearing about a rough season, for example, that was a very rough patch of several years for me. Working in a corporate environment, which I don't really feel that I'm very well suited to, and it felt in many ways like a gilded cage where I was, making enough money to survive in the Bay Area, which is very expensive, as I'm sure you know, but not really being fed or fulfilled by what I was doing, and feeling chained to a desk, which is not something that I am comfortable with. So I'm grateful to be back in teaching, and I have a lot of lessons learned that I am attempting to apply in everything that I do, as well as sharing that knowledge with burgeoning ministers who exist in a digital age. And social justice work now, at least in my view, is not possible to be brought to fruition without understanding the language that is spoken by the people who would be receptive to that message. We're going to talk about that a little today, and I've also been asked to talk about multi-religiosity. So we'll begin there, as that might feel a bit more comfortable in terms of what we might be already familiar with. So my first question to you is, what to you, and not everyone has to answer, but what are some ideas about what is multi-religiosity? What does that mean?
For me, it connotes kind of beyond interfaith. It's more than a recognition that we live in a, I don't know what you would call it, country, biosphere, whatever. We live in a place with a lot of religions, but for me, I resonate with practice. Have studied multiple religions. My religious identity is very hybrid. I was raised UU. I'm Sufi. My father was raised Orthodox Jewish. I've done all kinds of goddessy pagan stuff, partly from being queer or whatever. So I feel like multi-religiosity is about sort of, and the activism around it is like breaking down those notions that you're either this or that, or that if you're this, you can't love that, or that if you're this, you have to be fighting with that, but that really we're so interwoven and there's so much hybridity that how do we stop telling stories that make everything sound like there's these little units that are separate.
I love that. That's great. Does anybody have anything to add to that?
I would probably add to honor the actual history of how complex, I'll say religious histories or ethnocultural religious histories have been because of diaspora and migration and forced, I'll say colonial. There's just the it honors the complexity of the reality of how it actually always has been.
I really like that idea, particularly because one of my areas of specialty is Islam in the United States, for example, and we look at this supposed dichotomy of African American Islam versus like immigrants who came with their own interpretations of Islam, as though they are different things, and that the African American tradition exists in a vacuum, which it doesn't. Obviously, it is estimated that about 2.5% or 10 to 15 million Africans were forcibly taken in the white slave trade, and they were Muslim. So that Islam is actually, there's the idea that Islam is an American tradition, but we don't get that if we look at it in a very in binary terms. Thank you, Shannon. Anything else?
I am thinking of Ibrahim.
Yeah.
And I never had a class with Ibrahim, but he was important to me anyway. And how he modeled a spirituality that's sort of beyond a religious identity. So that's what I'm thinking about, and that's not a sociological, expression of it, but that's what your question made me think of. I don't know if I'd call it multi-religiosity. I think, I don't know. Is that something you use to describe a collective or a personal?
Thank you for reading my mind.
Yeah.
Yes, because I tend to think of it in two realms. One as an organizational identity and one as a personal identity. I'm sure there are more ways of looking at it as we've discussed, but one organizationally, if we look at Starr King as a multi-religious institution, we're saying that we have multiple identities and we welcome multiple identities that we can hold at the same time, even though historically the institution has been a Unitarian Universalist one. So we're saying that, okay, the history and the tradition that is the basis for this institution is Unitarian and Universalist, and we can pick that apart as well, but just saying that although it's a UU institution, it makes space for Hindus, it makes space for Wiccans, it makes space for people of Jewish and Muslim faith, it makes space for people who don't have a religious tradition. And in that way, we as an organization are multi-religious because we make that space. But then personally, I can be a Muslim and also a Buddhist, or I can have a Zen practice, let's say, but I'm Jewish, or I should say, and I'm Jewish.
Right.
So I think it's both of those things, and the concept that it's not either or, as Shams mentioned, it's a both and situation. I think that rankles with a lot of people, ourselves included, because it is easier to think in binary terms as a human being, at least in the way that most of us are brought up, thinking that, well, I'm this or I'm that. And if I'm not that, then I'm definitely this, right? Which is where racism and everything, everything stems from that sort of inability for me to be two things at the same time. That I can be, a white person and I can be welcoming to immigrants. Like that is the dichotomy that is presented by CNN or Fox News or whatever. That is a falseness that we're kind of bred to learn. Did you have something to say, Aaron?
Yeah, something that occurred to me earlier and now reoccurred to me is that I never thought of it this way. That multi-religiosity, and I also think of Bobby Ibrahim, and I think of Starr King, very very specifically in the way that we approach pedagogy or living in the world. I can't really put my finger on it, but I think Starr King. But the thing I wanted to share was that multi-religiosity is to religion as what queer is to sexual orientation. That it's this both and thing. It's this different thing, and it's, you can say oh, it's bisexual. It's both. No, it's something else. It's both. It's that and it's something else. That's special and wiggly. And that is my share.
Love it.
And what word keeps coming up is intersectionality.
Yeah.
It's all the ways that we are, come to create this very unique being that is this person right here.
And I think that's part of what I wanted to get out about Starr King, that it's not oh, I'm just I'm just a heathen and a Christian. It's like the way that the heathen and the Christian are in communication, and the way that dialogue happens. That like there is no Christianity without heathens,
Interesting.
and in this country there's no heathens without Christianity. You know, like the way we've constructed it, and it's that dialogue that there is no separation written.
I like the word dialogue because it takes us also to a place where I think, in terms of the trend of interreligious dialogue that has occurred in this country at least, we've moved from a very singular understanding of what religion is. I'm talking societally, so that there's some generalizations in that, to this concept of tolerance, right? That we want to tolerate other people of other religious traditions who may not think the same way we do. And that concept of tolerance has moved ever so slowly, like a cruise ship, to pluralism, where we actually want to engender an excitement about listening to different voices and having dialogue across and between traditions. The part that I would challenge this is not my work, this is the work of people who have a better understanding of multi-religiosity than I, and people like Diana Eck, who is very famous for her work in religious pluralism, is the idea that as a multi-religious person, or in true interreligious dialogical fashion, if I, as a theist, let's say that, for the sake of argument, that I believe in God, and I believe in a divine spirit, and I am fed by a tradition, and in this case I'll make it personal and say that I'm Muslim, that if I truly believe in interfaith, in pluralism, and not just dialogue, and from a multi-religious perspective, I should be able to go into another center of worship, if welcomed there, and worship in the practice that the person there does, and be fed in the same manner. Rather than, for example, I was giving this example to the orientation folks this morning. My wife was raised Christian, so she likes going to Easter, Christmas services, etc. So I'll go to an Easter service, and I enjoy being there and learning, and I'm a theologian, so I'm interested in the topic. But when I get there, do I smile and nod and be a good neighbor and enjoy the experience because I'm able to look at it from an outsider's perspective and say like, well, that's nice? Or am I listening to the word, or receiving the word in the Christian sense, and being fed by that experience, and feeling like, okay, got my prayer done for the day, or whatever, however I engage with my tradition. Conversely, if I'm a Hindu person, can I go to a Seder and feel that this is feeding me? This is the same, a same but different aspect of the worship that I already am committed to. And I'm not suggesting that each one of us has to practice this multi-religiosity, or that it has to be like this is the only way or something like that. But I think when we lift up the idea of universalism, we have to actually be able to step into those shoes and actually experience that for ourselves before we can say that we understand multi-religiosity. Otherwise, it is just interreligious dialogue. It's, okay, well, you do your thing and I'm doing my thing. We can talk about it and we play nice, but I don't actually experience the world the way that you do. Shams first and then Jen.
I know this is like a strong way to say it, and I mean no disrespect, but there's this part of me that's like, I need to call bullshit on that. And I know that's too strong, like I'm interrogating myself as I say it. But like, there's some piece of that to me that sounds, it's almost like when we'd say like, oh, I don't see race, I'm colorblind.
Awesome.
Like, I agree that one ought to feel somewhat fed, but to feel as, like, there's something distinctly unique about each one of us, and there's something culturally located about each one of us. So I feel like the ways that we get fed are personal, cultural, I don't even know what all the right words are, but like, I don't think there's any should, or there's no ultimate arrival place at which we all go into any forest, ocean, temple, house of worship, and there's so much imbued in how that worship occurs, for one thing, right? So there's so much cultural baggage or cultural beauty or whatever you want to call it. Let's say whether it's yours or somebody else's, right? But yeah, it just doesn't feel right to me that. And you might not have been holding that out as like an ideal or a goal, but my reaction was like, Som is saying we should all be fed equally to truly claim that we're multi-religious, and I can't go there.
I love it. That's great. Yes, Jennifer.
I'll go right along this dialogue. So, my sister and I, my two sisters and I, we were raised Methodists. And I gravitated towards Unitarian Universalism when I was 14. And my other sister, when she got out of the house, gravitated towards a Pentecostal orientation. And the other one was just like, what are you talking about? You didn't tell me. Oh, God, I thought you said guys, never mind. So like, she's just like, hello, I'm a Methodist, do-do-do. And then my sister and I, we went these places. And true story. The way I thought about it, I remember saying to my sister, who was 10 years younger than me, I said, we were playing Yahtzee, and I was like, come on, gaming gods. And she was in high school, and she started crying. There are no gaming gods. There's only one God, she said. I said, no, I don't mean I believe in gaming gods, Amanda. I was just kidding, right? So I really thought about it, because I really love my sister, who I'm kind of a parent to, and I want to have good dialogue with her. And I realized that her ability to frame things needs a particular story on which to hang, and my ability to have spiritual experience and to frame things does not need a particular story. It can translate almost any story and can go into almost any form of worship, and as long as I see no visible harm being done in there, nothing I can perceive, then I am fed. But having worked in hospice with a lot of people at the ends of their lives, what I see is that what they knew when they were young, which is linguistically programmed into them and is imbued with all the family memories, is what is most meaningful to them now. Yeah. A lot of the time. So I feel like I don't use language like yes. So like you can't do it. I can't go there. That's like where I can't go. But like when I said "damn it" for the first time, my whole UU youth group clapped. So I basically feel like multi-religiosity can be that experience of going in with other people. It can be that experience of listening very, very closely to where someone else is and what they need, and hearing through their needs and translating through the lens of who they are. And it can also be what happened when I took an intercession course at Hartford Seminary, which genuinely had a pretty equal balance of Muslim, Christian, and Jewish, and there were it sounds like a joke, and a mom, and a rabbi, and a priest, and a Unitarian minister, and a Methodist, and a Seventh-day Adventist, so from 8 different countries. And I remember we were talking about what was happening on the political landscape, and the course was called Conflict Transformation, and it was with the couple who worked with Mandela in the Truth and Reconciliation process after apartheid. And the couple said something, and some of our Muslims were very upset because it really challenged their theology. And so we were talking at the break, and I said, but what about this and what about this? These are like bad things that are happening. This is simplification. And they said, but Allah will make them good. And I went, oh. And it opened this thing up in me, because suddenly, when they described it more in depth, suddenly I could go there, and I had a greater hope. So that was not a situation of me being in having a spiritual experience such as they would have in their place of worship, but it was a situation in which my heart and possibility was opened by their religiosity. So I feel like, for me, multi-religiosity has to include that, not just the individual spiritual and the whole communication, like whole organizational, but the person to person opening of conduit from heart to heart.
That's really great. I mean, the thing that brings up for me, actually, both comments is one of my students in this past semester was writing a research paper on the use of Rumi in hymnals and the concept of appropriation and the ability, like, where does one draw the line, being able to say that one is universalist or multi-religious, but one is actually just picking and choosing parts from different traditions without understanding the history and the context for them. So that's another piece of the multi-religious puzzle where we have to say, well, okay, how much of this is me just like I read this thing online that allows me to do this Zen practice, and like I'm Buddhist,
Yeah.
right? You know, that if that doesn't make your skin crawl, this is the only part in which I will say it probably should, because I think that's a very uncomfortable place for us to be, particularly if we're working with people of other religious traditions. But that's also a story for another day. I'd like to, simply for the interest of time, I'd like to package the multi-religious part and just hold it with let's say that's the topic that we mean to discuss using online forums, whether we agree or we disagree about what it looks like. That's not the objective in this particular discussion. The idea is that we have a topic, and that topic is multi-religiosity, and we have an opinion about that, and that's what we want to communicate. Outside of the classroom, let's say that's our social justice mission for the week, is to communicate what is multi-religiosity in its different forms, or how we feel about multi-religiosity. Does that make sense? I want to treat that almost like a product, that we've packaged that up and we have an idea about what multi-religiosity is. And we say that, okay, multi-religiosity is one-liner. Like that's what that is. And then like if we had to do an elevator speech, which I'm sure you know that if you're in an elevator with someone, you have 30 seconds to say what is multi-religiosity. You got to just spit out one sentence or maybe two sentences at the most and say, well, this is what multi-religiosity is. Which I think for most of us who came up in seminary is like, no, I don't like that. I need more time and more like paper to be able to. But let's just, for the sake of argument, say that's what that is. And maybe there are certain key features of multi-religiosity that if we were buying a box that had multi-religiosity on it, on the back of the box would be these 4 key features: that it is welcoming of other traditions, it is experiencing other traditions in a certain way, it is not being it is being counter-oppressive in that it is making space while also not appropriating things from other traditions. You have this back of the box thing that it's like, oh, multi-religiosity, I turn it over and I know exactly what this thing is, right? So we create a product out of this, and this, maybe it is about Black Lives Matter, or maybe it is about spreading the good word on Easter Sunday, or maybe it's about encountering interfaith between a Hindu and a Buddhist group that you're working with, whatever it is. We want to take that package and put it out into the world. And there used to be a time where we could do that in a community center and community setting, and that would be enough. The word would get out. We would make some flyers and we say, I'm doing a lecture on multi-religiosity, or we're having an interfaith service, or we're doing an interreligious movie night, or whatever. And we post up, we put up posters and maybe send an email, and it gets out to the people that it needs to reach. And then our job is done, because people come and we do a potluck. And does this sound familiar, like the way that we might communicate in ages past? We have a Twitter account. We need to have a website. We're on Eventbrite. We do 100 other things to get the word out. And the idea is, how do we actually create a scenario where we're able to present a message and it reaches the people that it needs to receive, that need to receive it, with all the other noise that is happening at all different times. So my next question is for you is, how many of us have a cell phone? And there's no shame if you don't, or anything like that. Great. How many of us ascribe to some sort of social media engagement. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Okay, Reddit.
Oh.
Great. Some sort of news blogs or, other web reading.
Yeah.
Okay. YouTube. Has everyone seen a video on YouTube at least once? Okay.
I have a couple on YouTube.
You have your own videos on YouTube. Would you like to share the topics or the subject?
Sure. They're basically recordings of my sermons.
Oh, great.
And one was Unitarian Universalism meets process theology, which I think process theology is fantastic theological thought for you to use. I think you were at one of my process theology sermons. And then another one was just fun. It was a duet of myself singing B.C. Barnwell's "We Are" song for a baby class.
Oh, fun. That's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Great. That's a great example. So let's say that this idea of multi-religiosity is actually what we want to put on to YouTube. Now, does anybody know what an algorithm is? Has anyone heard that term?
Yeah.
Great. Would anyone like to offer a definition of what an algorithm is?
Yeah.
Please.
It takes inputs. It could be pictures, it could be comments, it could be topics, it could be a lot of different things, and it does an algorithm. It does some functions on it, and it spits something else out.
Love it. That's exactly what it is.
It's kind of like a math equation,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be symbols or numbers.
Correct. Yes. It's like a box. An algorithm is a box where you put in an input, something happens, and it spits out a different output. One of the most familiar examples that is given is like a recipe. A recipe, you look at a bunch of ingredients: garlic, onions, I don't know, asparagus, or whatever, chocolate.
Sorry,
Garlic chocolate.
Chocolate.
I've got a lot of varieties of chocolate here.
Well, it could be a mole.
That's true.
Yes.
I'd like to have dinner at your house.
I think Sonia's selling the idea of multi-religion.
Yes.
It's mole.
That was the algorithm.
The multi-religious cookbook. Yeah, that's a great one. Your recipe is the algorithm because you have the chocolate and the garlic,
Right.
and it goes through the algorithm, which is the steps of the recipe, and the output is
Oh, that's great.
Mole.
What a wonderful metaphor,
Yeah.
thank you.
it's not mine, but you're welcome.
Well, I like the box too.
Yeah.
I was gonna say evil magic, so this is all better.
Evil magic.
Well, it depends what you do with the algorithm. Right?
Right.
So Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, etc., they all work in a similar, obviously much more complicated way in terms of they use an algorithm to determine what you see when you log into Facebook. So here's an example. If you've never used Facebook, this might be a little bit lost on you, but it works in a similar fashion to many other social media platforms. That the Facebook algorithm receives the input is a bunch of different stuff, right? It receives a post from Sonia about chocolate. How about she's now learning chocolate, using chocolate to make asparagus, right? It receives a video from Tara about multi-religiosity. It receives a picture from me with my rescue dog, right? And it takes all of that stuff and it has to decide, well, Shams is friends with all of us, let's say, and what are we going to show Shams when she's
I think I am.
when they open Facebook for the first time that day, and all this stuff comes in. Which one of those pieces of content is it going to show? Well, Facebook has a way of doing that, and the algorithm that it uses depends on how close of friends you are, how many likes you've liked on each other's posts. Facebook also privileges certain types of content. For example, if it's a video, it's more likely to put it in someone's feed than if it's an image. But if it's an image, it'll be more likely to put it in someone's feed than just simple text or a link. It'll be more likely to show a link than it is a piece of text. So like there are these different grades of what Facebook likes to post, rather than even down to like the aspect ratio. If it's a square video, it will perform better than if it's a rectangular video, because it takes up more real estate on the screen when you're scrolling. So like there's a bunch of these different things, and that's what an algorithm is. It privileges certain things, and it decides that, well, Shams and I have been friends for 10 years, so perhaps they'll be more interested in seeing what I have to say than Sonia, who they just became friends yesterday, or who knows? Like that, Facebook doesn't disclose their algorithm, but YouTube works the same way. Twitter has a little bit of a different nuance, and so is Instagram. But the idea is that we have this algorithm that takes an input, chops it up, or does whatever it needs to do, and then there's an output. Is everybody following so far? So the theory that I like for us to think about today is a social justice algorithm, that we can take a concept, we can put it through, we can take multi-religiosity, we can put it through this algorithm, and what is dispersed is social justice or social change or what have you. And the idea that this comes from an idea of cultural capital that was posited by a theorist named Pierre Bourdieu, who explained or suggested or theorized that artists and entertainers are able to gain cultural capital through their work, meaning that the more work that we do, whether it's art like classic art or entertainment or podcasts or blogging or even social media, work on social media, the more we're able to increase our cultural capital, and we can spend, I use that in air quotes, spend that cultural capital to affect some sort of change.
So spend?
Spend.
Spend it,
like
to
money.
spend it, yes. We can spend it. So like Oprah says, buy this book, and I don't know, 100 million people just go out and make it a bestseller. Or Bono is able to say, donate to this charity, and hundreds of thousands of dollars roll in. The mechanism by which that happens is theorized to be cultural capital. And we can see that a similar type of thing on Twitter, for example. If you've never used Twitter, it's similar to Facebook or Instagram or any of those social media outlets, where you're able to make a post that is text or video or an interactive poll or an image of some sort, and you put it out into the world. And if people follow you on Twitter, they'll see that post. But if Pam and I if we just follow each other, then we'll see that. But Pam's busy making mole, so maybe she didn't see it, or maybe Jennifer saw it, or who knows, right? But if everyone in the room follows me, there's a better chance that one of us is going to see my post about multi-religiosity than nobody. And if I'm able to build a following that allows me to have 100,000 followers or even 100 followers, then I'm able to better affect social change, because I'm using that platform of cultural capital to get my message across.
Is the cultural capital just the number of followers, or is it more what they do with it, or
Good question.
Or is it how do you become an influencer?
It's both of those, actually. Yes, and the reason, and the idea of cultural capital is just it's a theory that was posited, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago. My work is in transferring that idea of cultural capital onto social media, and saying that we can actually see social media because cultural capital in social media, because Beyonce has more followers on Twitter than I have. I have like 800. She has 800,000 or 8 million or something like that, right? We can actually see the cultural capital, but to become a true influencer and influence people with the way that with the information that you have, you better not just have like 800,000 bots that are just following you because you said you give a free book or something like that, right? We need to consider how to take the message that we have and then build up our cultural capital, so that we're able to run it through that algorithm and and actually affect change.
Mm.
Otherwise, we're living in a vacuum. You know, we have this idea about multi-religiosity, and we're either talking about it to ourselves, or we're sharing it in a small group, or we're posting it on Twitter or Instagram or wherever, and we don't really understand how those outlets work, those channels work, and it doesn't go anywhere, and we're not actually able to create the change that we want to. Is that clear? Does anyone have any questions or additions before I continue?
I mean, I'm not really on social media to create change. I mean, I'm a little slapdash, and on Instagram I just post pictures that I like, and sometimes I do it 10 times in a day, and sometimes I don't do it for 10 months. And, so you could be really like strategic about how you use social media, but I think I'm friends with a lot of people who aren't.
I think most of us are that way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's
so
a problem.
that's the problem.
That is a
We're
problem.
not changing because we're not doing anything useful.
I think that's a very rough way to say it.
Yeah.
Like a challenge for a lot of us who are not social media savvy, and myself included. Like I have a day job, and I'll have time all day to be sitting on social media doing stuff. But who does?
Kids.
Yeah.
Kids and Donald
Retired
Trump,
people.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, no, I don't think that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Right.
Like that's what he does.
And journalists. Yeah.
Exactly. And he's able to say something, and it gets more media interest than something Barack Obama will have done himself in person.
Yeah.
Right? And like without making any judgments as to like their politics or anything, just looking at them, the two different people. Or we could use Michelle Obama for an example, because she's very, very socially active after Barack's presidency.
A lot of cultural capital.
A lot of cultural capital. And I'm not suggesting that we all need to become Michelle Obama or Donald J. Trump or anything like that. What I am saying is that there is a platform that each of them, as well as Oprah and Bono and others that we might look up to or despise or whatever, they've cracked that code of how to create a message and then put it through that social media algorithm and have an output that creates an effect.
Mhm.
That if we're not thinking in those terms, we're missing a whole audience that might be receptive to our work. So for me, for example, I'm a professor, but in my moonlighting, I also write novels and I make games. Like that's what I do. And I can't afford to not be on social media and hawk my wares there, or to understand how it works, and like not have a website, not have a Twitter account, because I won't get to the people that need to hear what that I think need to hear what I have to say, that I would like to hear what I have to say.
Mhm.
So what I'd love for us to think about is, if we have some sort of ministry, or if we have some sort of social justice consideration, or if we're interested in getting the word out about multi-religiosity, I'd love for you to take some time this weekend. Log into whatever account that is, or even a step beyond that. Read an article about how that particular platform works. Like I've always wanted to know how Instagram works. Like, what is Instagram? Or what's like, how do I get onto a subreddit? Or if I wanted to create a YouTube channel, or even like learn how YouTube works, how would I do that? And challenge yourself, growing edge yourself to look up just one channel and figure out how that channel works and what might it be used for the type of work that you do, or that you might be wanting to get into. Because I can almost guarantee that some of the people that might need or be thirsty for the types of discussion that you have to offer are not going to be found in this room, or at a coffee shop nearby, or even in the state. They might be people, for example, one of the things something that I found is that my games have garnered interest in like Germany or something. How would I ever know? Like I have no idea. I don't even know how they're, like it must be something, some algorithm that is feeding them that information that I haven't accounted for. And I suspect that the things that we may share in terms of our conversations here, they might be useful elsewhere if we understand how to use that algorithm to our advantage. Yes.
Just a quick thought. I've recently, so historically I like avoid technology because I think it's evil or whatever, but it's not. And I've recently like gotten more into keeping up with the kids, and I've recently like gotten super into YouTube. It's this really interesting platform where folks can like DIY, like straight from artist to consumer or straight from minister to consumer, like get their stuff out there, and it's freaking incredible. And just a couple little like stats to share because I think they're fascinating. Maybe they're fascinating. One, YouTube's like business, like how much they're getting out there, it doubles every year, and it's been doubling every year for like a decade.
Wow.
Doubles. Wow. So the content, whether it's religious or whether it's alt-right or whatever the hell it is, it's doubling every year. So like people are talking, people are listening, and and what we're talking about right now is who the hell's talking? Like maybe we need to talk. And just another little thing on YouTube. I mean, sort of off topic, but it is now the platform through which the most music is dispensed. Music for your ear. The most music is dispensed through YouTube.
Wow.
Not CDs, not records, not whatever. I guess
That's
MP3s,
fine.
whatever you know. It's fucking YouTube. So like this thing is it's whether we like it or not, and whether it's very different than the traditional models through which we preach. It's where it's going to be going down.
I just wondered if that's because of an algorithm that has to do with the search engine bringing YouTube up more.
There's many different ideas behind that. I mean, one of them is that YouTube has replaced like MTV, for example, in the way that I don't have to click on a TV set to wait to see a music video that I want to see. Right? I can just say
Or the PBS NewsHour.
Yeah, or the PBS NewsHour. I can just go on YouTube and look at it in that way.
But if I do a search for lyrics, it gives me a YouTube video, which isn't what I want. I want the lyrics. So there must be something in the way that.
I would suspect that Google does that. Google owns YouTube. I would suspect Google does that because they can monetize the videos that are on YouTube.
But also sometimes the video has the lyrics printed on it,
Yes, exactly.
so you can hear it and
Barely
see it.
when I'm looking.
But because it's gotten so popular that everyone's I'm 34. Anybody younger than me, they've been living it their whole life. Like I had to catch up after the fact and be like, oh, this is important. But anyone so when you type it in, they're like, everyone wants to see this.
I have another example, which is I served a ministry in Alabama for 2 years, Auburn, and I got acquainted with the state chapter head of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And she came and did a workshop on how to use Twitter in exactly the way you're describing.
That's great.
Yeah,
Did you
she's
find it
a
to be
Twitter
useful?
user. Huh?
Did you find it to be useful?
I haven't, I have a Twitter account, but I don't tweet. I only follow people. So I haven't done that yet. But I got it. I mean, I sort of grasped how, well, like you were saying, if it's an image, if it's what's more likely to get more attention via the algorithm. And it was very helpful.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, and I certainly am not recommending that we all become influencers. It's definitely a.
Well, we should. We're religiously doing it.
It's not for everyone, but I would say that one of our current students, Juniper Alejandro Patrick, I'm not sure if you've met her. She this past semester did a course with me, a skill course, because she wanted to become an influencer, and she has an email list where she talks about transformative justice, and just felt like there might be people who would be interested in hearing her message. So we essentially took her ministry and packaged it as a product, and now she has a YouTube channel where she's learned a lot of these different ways to promote herself. And what I think about it, like, yes, I'm happy that she's done this, and I'm excited that she's doing a good job on it, and you know, it's great. But what I'm thinking is, you know, you can go and see her channel, it's public, and one of the posts that she made was something about how to care for someone who is recovering from an abusive relationship.
Mm.
And for me, and there's very few videos on YouTube about this kind of stuff, you know.
Mm.
For me,
Depending what you watch.
depending what you watch, that's right. But I mean, if you just search for that, like it's very hard to find a genuine and like a tender, face-to-face sort of content producer to customer. This is you know, something that can help you. And for me, it would be a shame if that didn't exist on YouTube, because of how many people do use YouTube and need that message. And not saying that she'll get 1,000 views in a month or whatever the goal is, but the fact that that content can exist and didn't exist before she made it, that's sad to me. That's a great loss for the people over the past 15 years that YouTube has been around that haven't been able to access that kind of information. So what I would encourage is give it some thought, think about what an algorithm is, think about, is it multi-religiosity that is the message that you'd like to share? Is it, you know, something else that you've been thinking, oh, maybe I should get a website for my ministry, or maybe I should start a Twitter account, or maybe I could be a little bit more active on Facebook. I hesitate to encourage you to do that just for the sake of it, because I'm on social media all the time and it drives me crazy. Like I don't need to be attached to my phone the way that I am.
Mm.
But you know, it's a product of the work that I do and also the generation that I've come up in. But I do think there is a space for ministry online that people are thirsty for, and that we may not be reaching the types of communities that we could if we were a bit more comfortable with the tools that are available to us.
So, does anyone use blogs anymore?
Yes, certainly. And because of how heavily impacted the blogosphere is in terms of how much stuff there is out there and how much stuff there is to wade through, what I found that it is more powerful to join an existing blog as like a guest blogger or as a guest writer, than it is to just have one's own blog from the get-go.
Yeah.
Because getting enough people behind you to just like start reading your information, unless you have an existing community, like Juniper, for example, has an email list that she's able to drive people to her YouTube channel, which that's basically, if you heard the term growth hacking, that's one of the levers that you get to pull in growth hacking is you already have an existing something, and you say, okay, well, I want to push all these people on YouTube to my Twitter account, so I'm gonna make a video for them or something like that. But if you're just starting out and let's say, I got some ideas and you want to write an article, find an outlet that has to do with the type of multi-religiosity or whatever it is that you're trying to do, and see if you can do a guest article. And if you're really hot about having your own blog, link people back to your own blog from that article that you wrote. That's a tried and true way of gaining new followers and getting your message out there.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
Juniper, what's her YouTube channel?
That's a good question. I'll have to send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, so I serve a congregation of retired people. We have a few who are working who are like in their late 50s and 60s. And I'm pretty sure none of them are on Instagram or Twitter. So we're talking Facebook, maybe YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Have you worked at all with like folks who are kind of maybe on a different curve for being technologically savvy?
Yes.
Like some people are, younger people are not older people, let's just say. But some of them are on Facebook. So do you want to try to get people to see stuff on Facebook who it's not really what they do all the time and they're very sporadic? Or do you want to, somehow try to put content there that's maybe going to appeal to them, but, for outreach and that kind of thing? Like, we have our own little congregational Facebook page, but I'm not sure the people in the congregation care about it. They're all older. and I'm not sure anybody else looks at it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's the habit I need.
It's a great question. I mean, on the one hand, any tool is only as good as one is able to use it.
Right.
So it does make a difference if like, I'm sure you've gone to a website for a restaurant or a program or something and it's been awesome, and another one that's been like, did they make this in 1996? Like,
Right.
you know, that they're, and of course we want to have a, if we're going to have a Facebook page, we should probably do it right and have like the right size banners and the right types of content on there. So it does have a little bit of a learning curve.
Sure.
And at least the people that I've worked with, both personally and professionally, that are of a different generation that didn't necessarily grow up with Facebook and social media, I find that there's a thirst and an interest for engaging with content because that's the lingua franca and the way that people converse. I definitely know that, for example, family members that are older or younger than I am are super interested in engaging with different types of social media, whether it's my niece who likes engaging on Snapchat and TikTok, or my parents who like, and my grandmother who hang out on Facebook, you know, and they do, like literally my mother, who is a really big Warriors fan, will send me tweets and like Facebook posts about the Warriors that I haven't seen. And I'm like, holy smokes, like how did this happen, right? So I would say that the more that we can encourage this idea that people find stuff in interesting places where we might not think that they visit, the more we're able to provide a space for them to engage with the types of content or ministry that we're interested in. So I would guess that, for example, as a community activity, if you had someone in, or if you did it yourself, had like a session of like, potluck and learn how to use Facebook or something like that, I'm sure that would fly like super well, even though it's not like theological in nature, right? You know, but it's just like, oh, let's do this activity, or how to update your Windows. Like, I think that's like we think of like all these different like.
Actually, we do this. I call it a tech transfer evening because
Tell
I
us
try
about
to get people to talk about the technology they use and help each other, and then I bring my husband in for the hard hitting,
Oh, nice.
like impossible questions.
I love that. I think that's really fun.
Yeah, we get a few people. I don't know.
It needs a better title, Sonia.
Suggestions.
Tech and treats.
Yeah.
TNT.
Wine and widgets.
Now we're going.
In the interest of time, I think we have about 5 minutes before we need to. Well, whosoever's going to go to Mills probably, we'll probably want to get going pretty soon.
Really?
It's a really bad traffic.
It's not till 7, the dinner.
Oh,
Isn't it?
Yeah, we were supposed to have a
Yeah.
couple like hours to ourselves.
What?
I think we were supposed to have some time to ourselves. But
Yeah, free time.
But
yes.
So social media is something I struggle a lot with. One, I think Facebook is just an evil corporation, and I don't want to give them any money or tools or resources. And it's too useful of a tool, I think, to disengage with. It's something in our organizing we've argued a lot about because we're all agreed that it's, like, we've seen the documentary Great Hacks and the way that it's influenced elections, but also the benefit of getting the word out there and how to do it is too important. So I just guess that's the tension I'm constantly wrestling with, is how to use it and how to use social media. So I don't really have any answers to that, but that's sticking point. But we then have conversations about all the people who are going to use it unethically, who know how to use the algorithms, who know how to dominate the sphere. So if we move aside from the corporation, if we learn how to use the algorithms and learn how to use it effectively, then we can have a counter message out there. And I think we oftentimes forget sort of the reach that social media has. Oftentimes we think it's our own individual followers, but especially if a post is in public and then it gets shared and then it keeps going, that it has exponential outreach potential. When I was working in congregational life, our church administrator, she had a master's degree in studying social media, and we got so many people coming in just from seeing our Facebook, our tweets, and that whole system coming out. And my organizing work, we did a sort of art installation of a cage nativity on our
Of what?
cage nativity, Holy Family behind bars and
Page
nativity scene, just
Yeah, yeah.
recently. And
Yep.
the building we have it on, we put it on our roof, and our building is about 100 yards from a border crossing. So pretty impactful stuff. And so I did a social media post, just a reflection on why I did it. And then within an hour, I got a message from a reporter who was like, "I saw your Facebook
I
post.
think I
Here's
saw it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I saw it too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. See,
Yeah.
there we are.
Yeah.
But within an hour, there was a news article written about it. They hadn't even seen the building yet, but just saw the pictures and the image of where we were,
Yeah.
and the nativity within the border wall in the background. And it's like, okay, well, this was after I had gone on a month hiatus from Facebook until my co-organizers were like, get back on there.
Yeah.
So
I think, what comes to my mind is that they should be regulated like utilities.
Mm.
And so the thing to do, because we know how useful they are, and we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot to not use them at all, is to work to get legislation to get them regulated like utilities. I mean, even the utilities aren't regulated anymore.
Mhm.
But that would be a good project for somebody who doesn't have enough to do.
Yes,
Can I interject?
please, yeah.
That could be a whole nother conversation and a very long, but I really just want to lift up, I appreciate you sharing that because, excuse me, I'm going to go kind of old school here, but I think it was Jung that said the image is the tool for transformation. And your story is an example of that. And I think that as religious leaders in particular, and especially social change activist leaders, that it's important for us to think about what images we can create that do what the work of the story that you described.
Yeah.
Because I think in each of our own contexts, we have opportunities for that. And I'll just also give another example. I know this is years old, but it's in a social justice activist book. They were talking about creating memes. But they unfurled a jagged plastic strip that was like 100 yards long down one of the dams, and then took a picture of it because it looked like it had a crack in it, and then posted that image because they were trying. And years later, actually, that dam was taken down. But just to get people to even consider the possibility. And so this whole very, I'll say, old school understanding of the image in the human psyche that can create transformation, that can create I just think it's really important, and that ties into what you're saying.
Love it. That's great. I think you're spot on with Facebook being having a lot of nefarious aspects of the way that they run their business, and it's something that I wrestle with as well, because my time spent on Facebook is money in their pockets, right? To continue doing the kind of stuff that they're doing. And who knows how many other things that we don't know that we, the pants that we wear or whatever is contributing to something negative. And the story that you shared is very fulfilling. And I hate thinking of that art like an installation somewhere that only like 5 people get to see, right? The amount of people even in this room that were able to see that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Maybe the Starr King Facebook page could be a place for sharing images that we could then allow, I don't know about the copyright piece, but it would be a great thing to be able to find images that could start, that we could use to talk about the things we think are important.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Going in a different direction, as Starr King always needs money, if somehow all these things that Starr King people do could be cross-posted on the Starr King webpage. So,
Yeah.
so like, and
Oh, yeah.
yours is posted on the Starr King webpage, everyone who goes to look at it may then be routed over to Starr King, so.
That's really
Helping, because I'm listening to the people in this room and I'm saying, wow, look at all the amazing things that people go out and go forth and do, and I don't even know about, like I saw that image, I didn't know anyone from Starr King had anything to do with it, I think gives me
Awesome.
faith in the continuation of the work.
Yeah.
All the work.
Also, I don't know if I would be here if I didn't use Facebook because did we get mailings about this event?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I saw it on Facebook.
I saw it on Facebook.
Facebook.
That's
every
why
2
I'm here
months.
this weekend.
We did get an email or two,
I got 2
kind of last
postcards.
minute.
I got postcards.
I don't know.
I got postcards.
My parents also got postcards.
I got an email.
Well, let's close with that and a concept that actually I think is great that you brought up, Jennifer, about virality in that when part of the algorithm is that a sort of a rising tide lifts all boats sort of thing. So the way that a post goes viral, if you've heard that term, is when, let's say it's a Facebook post. I posted an image of my mole or your mole or whoever's, and someone liked it, someone shared it, someone else liked it, someone commented on it, someone else shared it, and so on and so forth, and then that snowballs, and it becomes exponential not only because many people are more people are seeing it, it has more reach is what the term is called, but also because Facebook, the algorithm within Facebook recognizes that this is a hot post. It doesn't know that it's an exciting or an interesting one, it just knows that it's getting a lot of activity in a short period of time. And that's why it starts boosting the reach of that post, and then all of a sudden it has 1 million shares or 100,000 likes or whatever. And that's the kind of thing that we want to achieve that we can only do in community. So I really like the idea of sharing, and like Xander would have to like work on that from the Starr King aspect of it, so I don't want to put words in front without having a system in place for that. But sharing something that one of us posted on the Starr King account, and then someone else sharing it from their own personal account, that all lifts the value of that content in the Facebook algorithm. And so the more that we can share in a digital sphere, the same way that we do in a personal sphere, I think the more we can use that algorithm to our advantage. So none of this is you must do, all of it is let's think about this.
To me, that would be a much less nefarious reason to be on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
It's like I could go on and I could help boost these posts, and I might learn something, and I might, have people in my congregation who want to interact with it. But when I go on Facebook, I get a lot of random, I don't know, weird stuff.
A lot of junk, right?
I'm not saying anybody in here would do that, but no, I mean, I'm not like, seriously, it's just random waste of time most of the time. Plus, I'm the
I couldn't agree
product.
more. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So
a lot of
there's
junk.
like this balancing that you have to figure out, but if there was some community plan that was strategic, I'd be all about that. I might let them back on my phone.
May I ask a strategic question? It sounds like maybe a sensible strategy, if you wanted to reach people, would be first to create a YouTube video, so you're on YouTube. And I think if you're on YouTube, when it's viewed, eventually there could be remuneration, right? Like YouTube,
True.
if you had enough, if it went viral. So then you make that, then you post it on your Facebook page, and maybe post it to some of your friends' Facebook pages, and then write to a bunch of your friends and say, please post this on your page. So that would be like how to get it up there initially, and then ideally it would go forth from there. But was that like a good initial strategy?
Yes, if your objective is to make videos, then that is a great way of what they call content distribution. So you'd make it. Your idea would be to create a video that you feel proud of and that you're comfortable with, and then use the other channels that are available to you. Whether that's like you have a lot of friends on Facebook, or you have an email list like we mentioned, or you have a Twitter account, or you have friends that have Twitter accounts, and then get everybody to point towards that particular video so that they get some more views, and it also looks more important to the YouTube algorithm. You'd also want to like have things like a good description for, or a good title for the video. You'd want to have a thumbnail for it. You'd want to have tags for it. You'd want to have subtitles. So there's a little bit of massaging that has to happen on YouTube itself.
And SEO and stuff.
Yes, the SEO for it. But then you would want to drive to it from elsewhere. That's the next step, is getting people from other channels to come to that.
So like that would mean you should be on also Instagram and Snapchat and.
Ideally, but I mean, corporations that do this for a living also go through this process of discernment and say like, well, how much time in the day do we have to hire people to run an Instagram account as well as a Twitter account as well as YouTube and everything. So there's only so much one can do in a day, which is why I recommend like thinking about one outlet that you can make your home for a little bit.